The time has arrived.
What's going on, everybody? Jammers here, and I'm here to present to you a new project Capcom are working on known as Word on the Street, where we keep you up to date in regards to the terminology used when talking about Street Fighter or fighting games in general. Some terms you'll be familiar with, whilst others you might not have heard of. But let us find out what the 411 is in Street Fighter V. Now there's a lot of information to absorb in this video, so feel free to pause and rewind the video at your own pace.
Now, let's begin!
Every fighting game has unique universal mechanics, and for Street Fighter V, it is known as the V system. One of three things within the V system are V skills.
Meteor! Show me everything!
Inside.
V skills are additional moves that help a character build V gauge. The V gauge can be spotted above the EX gauge, and they are one of the main ways to build V meter. To perform a V skill, you must press medium punch and medium kick simultaneously on your controller. V skills can assist a character in numerous ways. Some can be used as a combo extender. Some can help combat projectiles. And others can help out defensively. However, there are some V skills that amplify a move in a character's toolset. But the catch is the V skill itself is the initial phase.
Guard down.
And the next time you do a move that has a V skill enhancement, it will be more powerful than it was before.
Your guard's down.
When that move connects, you will build V meter, regardless if it hit or is blocked. There is a V skill indicator at the bottom left and right side of the screen. And when you use a V skill that has an initial phase, the V skill will start flashing, letting you know that the V skill is stored. Every character has two V skills now, meaning you now have a choice. If a character's V skill 1 didn't help out in a particular matchup before, then maybe V skill 2 will make up for it. Some characters can use their V skills more liberally than others, and some V skills have very specific uses. First, find out what your character's V skills do, and then find out if they can be used universally or in specific matchups. The second part of the V system you need to know about will be shifting over to the defensive side of things, and that is the V reversal. V reversal is the universal defensive mechanic to Street Fighter V and costs 1 bar of your V gauge. To execute the V reversal, you first have to be blocking, then press forward on your controller and press either all 3 punch buttons or all 3 kick buttons to perform the move. The button combination will depend on the character. Now there is a visual indicator above the V gauge letting you know when the V reversal is available. Once the V reversal connects, it should send the opponent away via a knockdown and give you a little bit of breathing room. These are known as strike V reversals. Please note that not every strike V reversal causes a knockdown.
Not done yet!
Some will leave the opponent standing. When a V reversal hits, you will cause recoverable damage, also known as grey damage. This is basically health that can recover over a certain period of time. Think of this as a bonus for successfully landing a V reversal. V reversals also reduce your stun gauge, so you might want to use this if your stun is high. Now if the V reversal is blocked, then you'll be left at a disadvantage and your opponent will potentially be in range to start their offense.
You're in my way!
But some strike V reversals create decent space even on block, which is a plus in my books. Because strike V reversals count as a hit, if the opponent knows that you are going to V reversal, then they could have a creative way of punishing you. Now the other type of V reversals in Street Fighter V are referred to as escape V reversals,
No chance!
which basically sends the character to the other side of the opponent without actually hitting them. Escape V reversals do not inflict grey damage, but they can get you out of a sticky situation if used correctly. You don't see escape V reversals too often because they can easily be punished, especially if used in the wrong situation.
No chance!
One last thing to keep in mind is that V reversals are susceptible to throws. This applies to both regular throws and command throws. Despite being the universal defensive mechanic, the V reversal won't always be available to you, and it does have its disadvantages, so it's in your best interest to find out where the V reversal is guaranteed, so that you don't let it go to waste. The third and final part to the V system that you need to know about are the almighty V triggers.
Submerge! Burn you down! Die a thousand deaths! Think it's over?
V triggers in a way are the comeback mechanic to Street Fighter V. They take a character to new heights and allow them to do things that they can't normally do. In order to have access to the V trigger mechanic, your V gauge needs to be filled to the max. And then you execute the V trigger by pressing heavy punch and heavy kick on your controller simultaneously.
Die a thousand deaths!
Now there are two types of V triggers characters can have: a 2-bar V trigger or a 3-bar V trigger. 2-bar V triggers are easier to acquire and allow the character to be a bit more liberal with their V meter. Whereas 3-bar V triggers take longer to obtain, but when it's available, the comeback potential could be possibly stronger than the 2-bar V trigger. All depends on the character. Once a character is in V trigger, there is a number of benefits that can happen. Some characters get better normal attacks. Other characters' special attacks get strengthened in some way.
Useless! Useless. Useless.
But the vast majority of characters gain access to a new move, one in which isn't normally available to them.
Useless.
With these V-trigger enhancements, characters can now perform better combos,
Useless.
counter certain attacks in neutral, or create a situation that is tough to break out of.
Push it to the red love.
Now it's all well and good being able to do these new things, but everything comes at a price. When in V-Trigger, there are two ways that the V-gauge depletes. The first way is via a timer.
I won't let up on you!
Useless. Useless. Useless.
Meaning that the V-Trigger will run out after a certain period of time, no matter what it is you do. Basically, you can do whatever it is the character is capable of for a limited time. The other way is via consumption, meaning that if certain moves are performed whilst in V-Trigger, then it will consume a certain amount of V-gauge. Ultimately making the V-Trigger drain quicker. If you choose not to do anything, then the V-gauge will still drain. The only exception to this rule is Necalli.
Useless. Useless. Useless.
When he activates V-Trigger, his V-Trigger doesn't run out, which is really good. But it does have its disadvantages. Quickly referring back to how V-Triggers are activated, there are 4 ways you can go about doing this. The first way is doing the activation by itself. When you activate a V-Trigger by itself, you can take advantage of the time freeze to help with certain situations, such as anti-airs, or reacting to projectiles done from full screen. This is something that happens frequently when playing Street Fighter V. The second way to activate a V-Trigger is by cancelling into it from normal attacks. Cancelling into V-Trigger from normal attacks allows for some really cool combos, and could potentially set up a situation that is great for you, but scary for the opponent. We refer to these as V-Trigger activation combos, which are universal in Street Fighter V. Now if the opponent blocks the activation, then fear not. As you will still be at some sort of advantage and can still pile on the pressure. The third way characters can go into their V-Triggers is by activating from their V-Skills. This is a great method due to the fact that you might need that little bit of V-meter in order to gain access to the V-Trigger itself. And this is another way of performing activation combos, or applying pressure on block. Now not every character can activate V-Trigger from their V-Skills, so do pay attention to which characters can, which characters cannot. Now the final way to go into V-Trigger is by cancelling into them from a special attack. Similar to normal attacks, you can use special attacks for activation combos. And on block, you can make certain moves safe from punishment. Or again, create a decent situation. One more thing to note about activating V-Trigger from a special attack is that some characters have to cancel their animations early to be able to go into the V-Trigger. Meaning they are sacrificing the little damage their special attack would have done to create an even more rewarding situation. V-Triggers accentuate a character's strength and allow them to illustrate their true potential. Every character has 2 V-Triggers available to them now, so study them meticulously and see how they can help you in certain matchups. I mentioned in a previous episode that if you land a counter hit using a heavy attack, then you will cause the crush counter effect. As stated before, crush counters are a more potent version of a counter hit, and is one of Street Fighter V's unique mechanics. When you land a crush counter, they will cause a different effect depending on the character. Some crush counters leave the opponent spinning, some launch the opponent, and some cause a crumple effect. Now if you go for a crouching hard kick and get crush counters, then it'll cause a hard knockdown. Meaning the opponent will get up after a certain period of time. And this situation is universal. Crush counters can be used for many things in Street Fighter V, such as meaty setups, punishing certain attacks, was thrown out preemptively in the neutral. Be warned though, if your crush counter button whiffs, then your opponent is most likely going to whiff punish it and leave you in a dangerous situation. Now the only character that cannot trigger the crush counter effect is Gil. As he has his own exclusive mechanic known as Retribution. Also, please keep in mind that certain V skills in the game can crush counter as well. As stated previously, V skills help build V meter. So if you use a character that has a V skill that causes the crush counter effect, then you will earn more V meter if it connects as a counter hit. Some characters have multiple crush counter buttons, whilst others only have one. And this is excluding the universal crouching hard kick crush counter. The crush counter system has gone through various changes throughout the game's lifespan, but they still play a huge role. Find out how to utilize your character's crush counter attacks so that you can be rewarded properly. In a previous episode, I briefly mentioned how the knockdown game in 2D fighters is a psychological game between the two players, due to the different recovery options the defender has. Will allow me to go into more detail about the different recovery options. first, what does recovery actually mean? A recovery is a technique that prevents you from staying down after being knocked down by the opponent. Now there are 3 types of recoveries that you should know about in Street Fighter V. First is the normal recovery.
Useless. Cells weak.
Also known as the quick rise. The second
Useless. Cells weak.
is the back recovery. And finally, there's delayed wake up. To perform a normal recovery, as soon as you get knocked down, press any 2 punch buttons at the same time and your character will get up on the spot. An alternative for the normal recovery is just by pressing down on your controller. This is to stay relatively close to the opponent and try to catch him off guard with a reversal attack.
Useless.
The normal recovery technique is quite common when trapped in the corner. To do a back recovery, instead of pressing 2 punch buttons, this time press any 2 kick buttons simultaneously. And you will roll away from the opponent. Another way of doing the back recovery is just by pressing backwards on your controller, essentially creating more distance between the 2 characters.
Useless.
Now the final recovery technique is known as delayed wake up, and it is really straightforward to execute. Input nothing on your controller and the character will not get up immediately, but they will get up at a later time. Delayed wake-ups are quite useful because you can sort of slow down the opponent's momentum and potentially get a punish. This is really effective against the grapplers. But please keep in mind that if you choose to do a delayed wake-up, the opponent may have a solution for that. A couple of things to keep in mind about the different recoveries in Street Fighter V. Firstly, certain attacks will leave the opponent in an unrecoverable state. We refer to these as hard knockdowns. The moves that cause these hard knockdowns are crush counter crouching hard kicks, certain special attacks, and certain critical arts.
You won't miss. It's not done. Handle this.
Secondly, after you land a throw, whether it be a regular throw or a command throw, back recovery no longer becomes an option for the opponent. Their recovery options are limited to normal recovery,
Useless.
and delayed wake up. Finally, certain special attacks don't actually knock the opponent down. Instead, they leave them in a standing position, meaning the attacker doesn't have to worry about the defender's recovery options. Mixing up your recovery timings is extremely important in Street Fighter V, as it makes your opponent stay on their toes and doesn't make you seem predictable on defense. If you keep doing the same recovery technique, then you make your opponent's decision making all the more easier. Hopefully you guys learned something new from this series, or that it served as a good refresher for you. Now, Word on the Street covered quite a bit of terminology, but there was a whole lot more we didn't include. If there is a topic that you want covered in a future episode, then let us know in the comment section down below. Take care, and we'll see you next time.